Happy New Year everybody, Super Insane 18 here, and today is not only the start of a new year, but the start of a new format. The January 2024 Forbidden and Limited list becomes legal today, so what better way to start off the new year than with a top 5 meta deck breakdown. But before we get into that, I do just want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors. I don't really do this all that often, I tend to do it at the end of videos, but I just want to say, make sure you check out Dueling Guard for some of the best TCG accessories of your life. You can use code INSANE18 for 5% off your entire order, as well as checking out Whatnot, an awesome online auction site that's looking to grow their Yu-Gi-Oh side of things. So if you sign up using my link in the description, you will get $15 credit towards your first purchase. Of course, using both of these will absolutely help out the channel and allow me to bring you guys some more amazing content, so make sure you check them both out. Kicking things off with the number 5 option, we are going to cheat a little bit because I don't think it is any one specific deck, but rather a group or style of decks, and that is going to be anything that is playing Runic. So we're just going to go ahead and say Runic decks are 5th on the list. You will also be seeing Joshua Schmidt's first place YCS deck profile of Runic Bestial, and the reason that I think that this entire group is what takes 5th place is because of how varied it is. Obviously you have the Bestial deck that we are showing here, but you can also play things like Runic Sprite and Runic Plunder, there's Runic Fur Hire, there's just so many different Runic variants that have not only not been touched on the list, but have also just gained a lot of power by other things that they struggled with getting hit as well. So these cards are honestly some cards that I don't really like, but I can respect them and understand how strong they are. Not only is it very consistent, providing you with a ton of search and draw power, but it also gives you a load of utility in cards like Freezing Curses, Destruction, Flashing Fire, things that can just destroy or negate your opponent's cards. And not just that, but you are then also just able to recycle it all back using the field spell, which of course lends into your draw power as well. So it's just an incredibly consistent and incredibly utility-based strategy that you can pretty much make Runic anything and you'll do pretty well, so that is why it takes the number 5 slot. Coming in at our number 4 slot, we have Manium. Now, some of you might be thinking that this might need to be a little bit higher on the list, because it is the one deck that was not touched in any capacity, but unfortunately, I just think that there are 3 other decks that are a little bit stronger, and we'll talk about those when we get there. For now, let's talk about the strengths of Manium. The build you're currently seeing on screen is the 2nd place Las Vegas regional build from Triff. Go ahead and check him out, you guys already know him, he's the Pen God. But yeah, I think this deck is very consistent and very strong, being able to not only play through a lot of interruptions, but also put up a lot of interruptions in and of itself. You have things like Fenrir, which can act as either a consistency piece, getting you into something like the Scareclaw engine because of Scareclaw Kashtira, or it can just be flat out another interruption on your end board, on top of very powerful cards like Dissipator, Baron, SP Little Knight, you know, just those really powerful cards. You'll be able to go second relatively easily because of cards like Astrolaud, which will just destroy cards that your opponent controls. You have Recursion and Cross Sheep, and overall the deck is just ridiculously consistent. You have so many search cards, and you might be thinking that Droll is an absolute death sentence, and while Droll definitely doesn't help the deck, it's not a death sentence at all. I remember at the Las Vegas Regional, I Drolled and thought that I would win. My opponent still set up SP, Baron, and Dissipator through a Droll, and I just wasn't really able to play through it. So the deck is very strong, it's very resilient, it can set up those break my board type end boards, and you're really going to struggle if you're not prepared for it. Coming in at number 3, we have Fire King. Now, Fire King is a deck that I expect to go higher up in the list once we get some more cards that we are waiting on at the end of this month, as well as I believe next month in February. But for now, it does take the number 3 slot. When this deck first came out, I said it was the worst Unchained, but now with the recent Unchained hits, I definitely think that this knocks Fire King up a peg, and Fire King is one of the better decks that can utilize the Sinful Spoil engine. Since the Sinful Spoils engine revolves around level 1 fire monsters, and we now have the legendary Fire King Ponix, we are able to just summon that from our deck, giving us a ton of access to it, meaning that we are able to pretty much access our entire deck, because Ponix will search the Sanctuary, Sanctuary will search the island, so on and so forth. The build that you're seeing on screen is a 1st place remote duel regional build, and I think it looks pretty solid. Now, this deck does struggle a little bit playing through interactions, but that is one of the many reasons that you want to max out on a card like Arvada. For those of you that don't know, Arvada is kind of like like what Emancipator was doing with the Meru Guardian, being able to just summon a monster negate. That way you can play through things like Ash Blossom, Droll, Nibiru, Veiler, so on and so forth, but it does have a little bit of added bonus as well, because it doesn't get rid of itself the way that Meru Guardian did. It destroys another fire monster, which is what activates all of your Fire King effects. So not only are you putting up a way to stop your opponent from interrupting you, but you're also gaining advantage depending on what it is you destroy using its effect. And I think that that's just ridiculous, that your way of preventing getting interrupted actually extends your board even further. But not just that, it also has the effect of when it is destroyed to be a reborn, something similar to the other card in this deck, which is the High Avatar Kirin. So you're just kind of able to cycle through your resources in grave as well, which is important with all of the destruction that you're doing. I definitely think that once we get cards like the Snake Eye Populace and Bonfire, again later this month and next month, that this might probably go up a peg or two, but for now I definitely think it's worthy of the number 3 slot. Coming in at number 2, we have a deck that I personally cannot stand, but I have to be unbiased and bring you guys the information as it is. That is going to have to be Labyrinth. On screen you are going to see Dinkabui's top 4 YCS Labyrinth list, and this is another deck that is in a similar vein to Manium, where it didn't get touched at all with the ban list, but not just that, it is actually getting stronger later on in the next month or two when we get cards like Transaction Rollback. Now, my hatred for Labyrinth stems from something that you've probably heard me say on the channel before, and that is that I am not scared of a single card with Labyrinth in its name. I'm scared of the other blowout traps, the floodgates like Skill Drain, Goes In, Rivalry, so on and so forth. And while technically, yes, those Goes In, Rivalry, there can be only one, did get hit, I was proven wrong, and apparently the Labyrinth players that I were playing were just not very good, because once I sat down across from a good player and they absolutely clapped me with just Labyrinth cards, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and while I still do have a disdain for the deck, I can respect it a little bit more. Not only being able to search a lot of the cards that they need from their deck, but being able to activate traps the turn they are set traps directly from their deck, so on and so forth. This deck has a lot going for it, and while it is kind of easy to stop with cards like Ash Blossom on either the Big Welcome or the Welcome Labyrinth, and cards like Ghost Spell again on the Big Welcome, or the cards that will add themselves back, mainly the furniture, it's still definitely a force to be reckoned with, because it can just slow the game down to its own pace, and once it does that, they're playing a much easier game than you. If you're playing a combo deck and they're able to just slowly whittle away at your combo pieces, eventually they're just going to have everything they need while you have absolutely nothing, and that is the main strength of the Labyrinth deck. And before we go on with our number 1 slot, I did want to give just one honorable mention, and that is going to have to be Unchained. Now, Unchained is in a little bit of a weird space, because the only hit that it really received was Sharvara going to 1, and unfortunately that is enough to kind of put the deck in a weird limbo space. While that doesn't necessarily kill the deck and you are still able to set up the same boards as before, it definitely does lower the consistency, not only in the fact that you might not now open a way to destroy your own cards, but it also prevents you from playing through certain interruptions. One of the strongest plays was using Sharvara on your own tour guide if they did something like Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence to be able to dodge that card, and honestly I just haven't tested enough yet, since the format is literally brand new today, to determine where Unchained actually fits in the grand scheme of things. So I definitely wanted to give it an honorable mention, because maybe it still is in the top 5, but I know that a lot of players kind of jumped ship off of it, so only time will tell. It was definitely worth bringing up and mentioning, but unfortunately not enough to make it on this list. And last and certainly not least, since it is taking the number 1 slot on our top 5 list, if you haven't already guessed it, it is going to have to be Rescue Ace. Now, Rescue Ace did receive a relatively big hit in Airlifter going to 1, but unfortunately that doesn't really make too much of a difference. I'm going to go ahead and put a build on the screen right now. It is Pack's first place list from an online tournament that he played in. I believe he also hosted it, but he did win the tournament as well, and the reason I say that this is still without a doubt the best deck is because it is still ridiculously consistent. Looking at the build here, there are still, I believe, believe, 21 starters to be able to get you into your full combo. And I think it's a 45 card deck, so over half of your deck, or a little bit under half of your deck, just being a starter is absolutely insane. You are still able to set up the full boards. Being able to set 4 from your deck is a crazy card. Turbulence is just nuts. Not only does it set those 4, but if your opponent causes anything to leave the field, it will destroy a card. Then you also have something like Preventer, which is not only a Book of Moon, but if they out it, it can reborn your cards, which now is more important than ever because you'll prioritize banishing your Airlifter. That way Preventer can reborn it, and then you'll just be able to keep your Airlifter constantly in rotation and constantly cycle it back to your field. We still have the Diabellstar engine at full blast, and you can see he actually maxed out on it, not only playing 3 of the Witch, but 3 original as well. And that's something that, well, I think is absolutely crazy, makes a lot of sense, because now, let's say you brick and you open up a hand trap, you can normal summon an Ash Blossom, and your chances of opening up something like an original Sinful Spoils is now so much higher, so you can just send the Ash Blossom, get access to your Hydrant, and pop off from there. Hydrant can search like a Preventer, or a Turbulence if you have another way of putting another Rescue Ace card in grave, and there's just so many possibilities. And not just that, but we are also going to be getting more support that makes this deck insane. Not specifically Rescue Ace support, but the same support that we're going to be seeing for Fire Kings. We're going to have Bonfire, we're going to have Populous, we're going to have the, I believe it's Promethean Princess, the Link 3. There are so many cards coming out within the next 2 months that just make Rescue Ace such a dominant force in this meta that I don't think anything else at the moment compares, and this is without a doubt the #1 deck on this list. And there you guys have it. That is going to be my top 5 meta list for the January 2024 format. We are bringing in a new year with a new format, and personally, I am excited to get back into the game and have a new, fresh look on it. The format does change quite a bit with the hits that were made. There are, things that are also coming back that we didn't mention, like Orchist and other various things that came back on the list, and we will only have to wait to see how those perform in the meta. But you guys know the deal. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.